Welcome to News Mongolia, where we bring you the latest stories and updates from across the nation and beyond. I am Batsir Namshir. On the News Mongolia today, Speaker of Parliament discusses bilateral cooperation with the Canadian ambassador. Industrial sector production grows by 7.9% compared to 2023. People under the influence of alcohol will be prohibited from being in environments with children present. For the news, stay tuned. On November 18th, Speaker of Parliament Amar Baisagaleng met with Sandra Shofani, the ambassador of Canada to Mongolia. They exchanged views on strengthening relations and cooperation between the legislative bodies of the two countries.
Speaker Amar Baisagaleng emphasized that the relationship between Mongolia and Canada is rooted in shared democratic values, respect for peace, human rights, gender equality, and mutual interest in fostering sustainable development. He highlighted the importance of expanding collaboration with Canada, a vital third neighbor, and noted that the bilateral relationship was elevated to a comprehensive partnership last year. Ambassador Shofani underscored Canada's commitment to enhancing trade and economic ties with Mongolia. She highlighted the launch of the Eco Farm project this year under Canada's development program. This initiative aims to bolster local capacity to adapt to and address climate change challenges. Speaker Amar Baisagaleng expressed gratitude for Canada's impactful projects and programs, particularly in agriculture, recognizing Canada's leadership in the sector. He acknowledged these efforts as valuable contributions to Mongolia's socio-economic development. He also noted the crucial role of cooperation between the two countries' legislative bodies and expressed Mongolia's willingness to support policies and initiatives to maintain political dialogue and foster mutual understanding.
Mongolia's industrial sector saw a 7.9% increase in production in the first 10 months of 2024 compared to the previous year, reaching 26.5 trillion MNT. This growth was largely driven by the mining sector, which grew by 1.8 trillion Mongolian tugrus, and electricity, gas, heating and air conditioning, which rose by 121.6 billion MNT, according to the latest data from the National Statistics Office.
Industrial sector production increased by 7.9% compared to the same period last year, according to the National Statistics Office. Based on preliminary data, industrial production for the first 10 months of 2024 reached 26.5 trillion MNT, an increase of 1.9 trillion MNT compared to last year. The main contributors to this growth were the mining sector, which increased by 1.8 trillion MNT, and electricity, gas, heating, and air conditioning, which grew by 121.6 billion MNT. Based on preliminary figures, mining and extraction industry production for the first 10 months of 2024 reached 19.1 trillion MNT. This was an increase of 1.8 trillion MNT from the same period last year, driven mainly by coal and brown coal extraction, which grew by 1.6 trillion MNT, and metallic ore, which increased by 301.8 billion MNT.
Recent changes to the law on child protection aim to strengthen safeguards against violence in family and social environments. The new regulations introduce stricter rules for parents and guardians, prohibiting abuse, alcohol consumption around children, and participation in child-related activities for people with a history of violence or sexual abuse.
According to data from Child Protection Services and reports made to the 108 Child Helpline regarding the violation of children's rights, approximately 70% of children who became victims of violence experience it at home, often at the hands of relatives or immediate family members. Most cases involve physical or emotional abuse, and in some instances, even sexual violence. Legally, parents and guardians are obligated to ensure their children's safe upbringing, development, education, and well-being of their children until they reach adulthood. However, violence against children continues to occur within family settings. An analysis of these family-based violence cases reveals several contributing factors, such as alcohol consumption or behavioral changes in the perpetrators. The underlying causes of violence often relate to the perpetrator's psychological state, social interactions, behavioral tendencies, and mental health conditions. The person's socialization level and personality traits significantly influence their actions. While unemployment may not directly cause domestic violence, it can indirectly contribute by creating stress and frustration, which some people may inappropriately direct toward their children or family members. Looking at the root causes, it becomes evident that issues such as self-control, socialization, behavior, and communication skills are fundamental factors that contribute to such incidents. In connection, significant changes have been made to the law on child protection, particularly aimed at expanding child protection within family and social environments. These updates include specific prohibitions under the framework of family and child protection. For example, parents or guardians are prohibited from mistreating or abusing their children, forcing them into intolerable forms of labor outside what is legally permitted, or sharing their child's voice or video recordings publicly without consent. Additionally, parents, guardians, and caretakers are prohibited from consuming alcohol or being intoxicated in environments where children reside. They are also barred from entering the child's environment while under the influence of alcohol. This provision directly addresses the frequent link between alcohol consumption and acts of violence against children. Moreover, these regulations extend beyond the family setting to all environments involving children, such as educational institutions, child care centers, dormitories, and any organization working with children. Employees of these institutions are also prohibited from entering children's spaces while under the influence of alcohol. Should such incidents occur, people who are aware of the situation are obligated to report it to the police or the child helpline. One critical provision of this law prohibits people who have committed violence or sexual abuse against children from participating in any activities involving children or being employed by child-related organizations. For instance, a teacher found guilty of abusing a child would no longer be allowed to work in educational institutions or participate in child-related activities. To ensure the practical implementation of these legal provisions, organizations must integrate them into their child protection policies. Recruitment criteria should reflect these regulations, requiring background checks through databases for relevant offenses or violations. These measures are necessary to bring the law into practical effect and ensure children's safety in real-world contexts.
Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Now let's take a look at international news from our partner agencies. The United Kingdom has announced measures against Iran for aiding Russia's war in Ukraine. The announcement comes as the world prepares to mark 1,000 days since Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
1,000 days.
Britain's Foreign Secretary David Lammy reiterated Britain's support for Ukraine Monday, saying aiding Ukraine goes beyond the Ukrainian people and European security, but strikes at the heart of what the United Nations Security Council stands for: the right to be a sovereign, independent country, free to choose its future, protect its borders, and stand up to aggression.
We are using the full force of our sanctions to constrain the Kremlin's illegal actions. from their shadow fleet of oil tankers to suppliers to their war machine, from shady kleptocrats to mercenaries destabilizing the continent of Africa. And we are stepping up our support to put Putin in a position of strength with a new loan backed by profits from sanctioned Russian assets, part of a new G7 package of $50 billion in assistance, and a commitment to £3 billion in military aid for as long as it takes.
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield said the Biden administration plans to continue arming Ukraine with an additional announcement coming in days.
I again call on another permanent member of this council, China, to stop stoking war on the European continent, to end enabling Russia's war effort, to cease providing dual-use goods to Russia, and to quit parroting Russian talking points to justify this war, because there is no justification. Most of all, I call on Russia to end its aggression against Ukraine and now. In the support to countries like Iran and the DPRK, support that foments instability not only in Europe, but everywhere from the Middle East to the Indo-Pacific.
President Joe Biden authorized Ukraine to use U.S.-supplied missiles to strike deep inside Russia over the weekend, easing limitations on the longer-range weapons as Russia deploys thousands of North Korean troops to reinforce its war, according to a U.S. official and 3 other people familiar with the matter.
1,000 days is a very big number. On one hand, it proves Ukrainian bravery in the face of brutal Russian aggression, as well as the support of our partners, for which we are grateful. On the other hand, this number proves the failure of the international community, including this esteemed Council, to stop wars of aggression and atrocities.
The decision allowing Kyiv to use the Army tactical missile system for attacks farther inside Russia comes as President Vladimir Putin positions North Korean troops along Ukraine's northern border to try to reclaim hundreds of miles of territory seized by Ukrainian forces. Biden's move also follows the presidential election victory of Donald Trump, who has said he would bring about a swift end to the war and raised uncertainty about whether his administration would continue the United States' vital military support for Ukraine.
UK is keeping the spot.
Tuesday, November 19th, will mark 1,000 days of war in Ukraine. For Ukrainians living in Chicago, many of whom still have family and friends in Ukraine, the uncertainty of war has been taxing on their communities.
When Russian tanks rolled into Ukraine in February 2022, the conventional wisdom was that the capital, Kyiv, would soon fall and the rest of the country wouldn't last long against a much larger enemy. Instead, it was that narrative that quickly collapsed. The Ukrainian army proved it could slow the advance of Russia's forces and, if not drive them out completely, then with enough support from the West, at least forestall defeat.
And just today, even today, Russia attacked Odessa, a beautiful city that everyone in the world knows from movies, from everywhere, from writings. They attacked Odessa and they killed civilians, among them many, many children. How long is the world going to just keep on looking and waiting? What are we waiting for?
Nobody knows what tomorrow holds for anyone. And it's such a sad part, especially with the recent attacks that Russia launched towards Ukraine. A lot of parts of Ukraine were affected. And the scariest is not to be able to provide the safe today for your family. You know, I mean, it's hard because not everybody can move, not everybody can relocate. So, you know, I have my cousins who are still there, and the scariest is to be able to hear those rockets.
Well, that's all for today. Thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Goodbye.